is there a scenario where we love Jaden Daniels and Drake May, and the Patriots maybe only love Drake May, and they want to come up to number 2 and give us number 3? Is there a scenario where something like that could happen? Pop, what's going on, man?
Son, how you doing?
Doing good. Back at it. Boys are back. Both in Burgundy today. I like it. I know it's not the regular season, but we broke out the Commanders gear either way.
Just
to enjoy it. Hey, while we get started, guys, thank you for all the love on last week's episode. That was pretty cool to see the new season rollout be matched with the enthusiasm. Love seeing you guys get in fights in the comment section. And
love that.
Share your opinions and the scouting breakdowns from a couple people. Like, that was really cool. I enjoyed talking to y'all, and especially talking about ball. It's always a good time. So, guys, stick around, subscribe, hang out. We're coming to you every Monday and Thursday for now until the end of time. So let's enjoy it. But today, Pop wants to kick us off.
I just want to make a comment. We're really pleased. This is a grassroots podcast. 80% of our listeners are not subscribed. 80% of our listening hours are from people that aren't subscribed. So please, it's free, doesn't cost you anything, and it helps us out a lot. So if you give us a listen, we'd love it if you hit that subscribe button. It really does help out, and we're looking to kind of grow this thing gradually. So appreciate it.
Yeah, and I mean, think about it, Pop. Like, how many times are you on YouTube watching a video and you're not subscribed to the channel, you don't like the video, but you love it. You watch it the whole way through, right? Just take that extra 2 seconds. Ever since I started working on this channel with you, I always try to make sure, take those extra 2 seconds, hit it.
Absolutely.
Show the appreciation, because like you said, Pop, it doesn't cost you anything. And if anything, helps you stay up to date on the content you're already enjoying. So
that's right.
Let's do that. We promise not to spam you guys with too much craziness. But after a couple minutes of shameless self-promotion, why do you say we get into it, Pop?
Let's do it.
Let's talk. So today
we're
doing some mock draft situation. We're going to talk free agency a little bit later on in the pod. But step one for the Commanders, there's a lot of talk of, like, I think it's kind of ironic. Like, there's so much talk about, like, what are we going to do with this team? What are we going to do with the number 2 overall pick? Do we want Caleb Williams? Do we not want Caleb Williams? There's a team picking ahead of us, and they have the ultimate choice here, right? And that is the Chicago Bears. Of course, we had a lot of Bears fans tuning in last week, and so we want to look at, what will Chicago do before we can get into what we're doing. What is Chicago going to do with that number 1 overall pick? And subsequently, how does that affect Justin Fields? That's the first topic for today. So it's looking like, Pop, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the more and more steam is kind of picking up that there's going to be a trade for Justin Fields in the next week or so, in the next couple of weeks. The first line in this article I just pulled up here says it feels like a matter of when and not if discussing the trade. And sure enough, as I've been saying for the last 9 months, year and change, as my upstairs neighbor bowls a strike above my head here. I hope you guys can't hear that. As I've been saying, it's gonna be Caleb Williams, number 1 overall. It seems like we're just really zeroing in on that. Pop, give it to the people. Tell them how you're feeling about that, or what you're seeing.
The reporting seems to be pointing that way, that the Bears are going to try to maximize the value for Justin Fields, and it's building. There's multiple reports. The one you're referring to is from NBC Sports, but a lot of very, knowledgeable and connected Chicago Bears reporters are starting to report that momentum is building and that trade's going to happen. I kind of wonder a little bit about the timing. Is it better to wait to get closer and closer to the draft, or even during the draft when teams, don't get the opportunity to pick that QB they wanted? Will they even up the value? I don't know. I'm sure they know a lot more about that than us. But yeah, I think therein lies the problem for the Caleb Williams crowd, which I'm finding myself becoming more and more, in that camp. You need a trade partner. You need a dance partner if you're the Commanders. I think the Commanders are going to try to trade for Caleb Williams. I'm becoming more and more convinced that that's where they are. They're going to explore it. They're going to go after it. I think this kid, the more I read, the more I looked into it, is clearly the top talent on the board. I think there's people trying to convince themselves otherwise. The good thing is, like I mentioned before, there are three very good prospects in those top three quarterbacks. So in a way, it's a perfect position to be in.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, all signs are pointing to the Bears going with Caleb Williams. Now we had some Bears fans commenting, come at us again. We love the comments. Nothing makes us happier, negative or positive. We love it. But yeah, I mean, well, we can only go by the reporting that we're hearing. And the reporting leads us to believe that Commanders are going to stick with number 2 and have to take whatever's left after Caleb Williams becomes a Bear.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a pretty clear cut situation at this point. It's just hard to
Do you think it's the right move for the Bears?
Yeah, I do. I do think
Yeah.
so on paper. You look at the amount of starts the Fields has had, it's hard to find evidence to show that there are quarterbacks with that amount of starts and those statistics that go on to be great quarterbacks in the NFL. I mean, you look at a guy like Matt Stafford who was in a bad situation and lost a lot to start, but it was never because of Stafford. He was always balling. There was never any question there, even as bad as that situation was that he was drafted into in Detroit, right? And with Fields, it's kind of a matter of like, is he making the situation any better in Chicago? Is he making it worse? There's a lot of really, the tape is very puzzling on him. There's a lot of plays that just make you go, oh my God, this guy is like the second coming of Lamar Jackson. And then there's a lot of plays that make you go, who the hell put this guy on the field?
Yeah.
It's just such a
it lacks consistency. There are flashes that look great, but it lacks consistency. And it's a similar situation, although very different circumstances, 5th round pick, first pick, there, but that we have with Sam in a way, that there's those flashes and those tantalizing things that you look at, but is it consistent? Can it be maintained? Yeah, I think he's going to get a shot somewhere to start. There are teams interested in Justin Fields.
Definitely.
Steelers have come up, Atlanta have come up. You may have heard of others. So he's going to be a starting QB in this league next season. It's just probably not going to be for the Bears.
Yeah, I agree. And I think like what we've seen from Fields, it's a similar situation. I think Fields has shown a little bit more than Howell showed, but it is a similar situation where it's like, okay, if he just showed us a little bit more, we'd be comfortable, giving up on the alternative. But I would say the thing with Fields is that the other situation at play here is the contract situation, and is that he's got a year left, and then you've got to pay him. So if you're keeping him around, you're
true.
working on an extension, and he certainly has not done enough to justify an extension, 100%. So
you're not picking up if you keep him in Chicago, or if you trade for him, you're not picking up someone that's on a rookie deal for very much longer. That's great insight.
Yeah, and you're looking at a guy that there's no guarantee that he's going to stay around Chicago. Like, he could say, nope, I'm going to go to free agency. You could pull a Kirk Cousins. I want to see all the teams in free agency, and then I'm going to go to the best situation, which is not the Chicago Bears. Lord knows if he plays well, the market for him, I mean, he's going to be making $50, $60 million a year if he were to have a great season this year that demanded, a big contract extension, and it's going to be the Justin Fields sweepstakes. So I think you can lock up a guy in Caleb Williams for 4 or 5 years who, to be honest with you, you would expect to hit the ground running day one, be better than Justin Fields already, let alone the potential the guy has. I don't see how they pass on that. And that's why I've been screaming about doing a trade up, because I think that is the only way that you're going to get him. I think it's very unlikely that they fall back, and I think it's just some classic Washington football luck. It happened with Joe Burrow, and it happens again with the Panthers this year.
Well, let's see what the mock draft guys are saying. We pick at number 2. We've got 4 different views of mock draft people. let's get on a little bit to talk about
Yeah.
what the mock draft guys are saying for those top picks in the draft and how it impacts the Commanders.
Yeah, exactly. So I love that. I'm super ready to move on to mocks. And basically, I'm looking here. So we're 1 for 1. Daniel Jeremiah, Caleb Williams, #1 overall. Field Yates, my guess is going to be Caleb Williams, #1 overall. Let's see.
Well, why don't you just go? Why don't you go through each guy's picks top to bottom one at a time? That might be easier than trying to bounce back and forth.
Yeah, so let's do it. Let's stick with NFL Network here. Let's go Daniel Jeremiah. He has got Caleb Williams, #1 overall. #2, Drake May to the Washington Commanders. We've seen a lot of back and forth on Twitter about that guy in the last week. He seems to be the character of the week for Commanders Twitter. There's always somebody new to discuss for a few days. So that's Drake May right now. #3, Marvin Harrison Jr. to the Pats, which I think is very interesting.
Daniel's dropping.
#4, he's got Malik Neighbors to the Arizona Cardinals, which I also find interesting. #5, Joe Alt to the Los Angeles Chargers would be a great pick. And then Jaden Daniels at #6 to the Giants.
Wow.
And then Olu Fashanu to the Titans at 7. I know a particular person that would be very excited about that. JJ McCarthy to the Falcons at 8. This is a riser. Roma Dunze. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but I've seen his game. He's fantastic. Wide receiver for Washington to the Bears at 9. And then I don't know who this guy is to the Jets at 10, another offensive tackle. So a lot of receivers, a lot of quarterbacks in that top 10.
Four quarterbacks in that top 10.
I think it's really interesting looking at that because the wide receiver thing I think is fascinating, and maybe this is a topic for another podcast. I think it is. But, you see these guys with these big flashy wide receivers, the Justin Jeffersons, the A.J. Browns, guys of that caliber. It's not usually those teams in it at the end of the year, I just think that's an interesting thing. Those guys are really good weeks 1 through 17, but it's easy enough to kind of take them out of the game once you get into the playoffs. I think that's just an interesting thing here. We're going to skip ahead to CBS Sports here for the next mock draft, and we've got this one so this is the other side of the coin. Here we got Caleb Williams at #1, as we expect. Jaden Daniels at #2, Drake May at #3, Marvin Harrison Jr. #4, Fashanu #5, Neighbors 6, Alt 7, Turner Edge out of Alabama, #8 to Atlanta. And then O'Dunn's as well to Chicago at 9. And same guy, Talise Fuaga out of Oregon State at 10 to the Jets.
Easy for you to say.
Some of these names, man, are tricky. But
he's got J.J. McCarthy going 13 to the Raiders, so still pretty high, yes, but dropped down a little bit there.
Some similarities there. But let's discuss these two mock drafts. Pop. Basically, the big thing for us is we're looking at Jaden Daniels or Drake May. And right. You see one guy has Jaden Daniels sliding all the way out of the top 5, has the Patriots passing on Jaden Daniels, and then the next guy has Jaden Daniels going at #2 to us. So what do you make of that disparity there with how Jaden Daniels is being
I was surprised seeing Daniels slip like that. I didn't really, given that there was a debate, some people go as far as to say he's the #1 quarterback. Some people think the same thing about Drake May. I think they're all out to lunch. I think it's
I agree.
There, but you never know. I mean, it's interesting, and I think as we get into the combine, we'll know more and more. And to me, it just depends on the day and what I'm reading as to whether I think May or Daniels will be the better pick. I'm really probably need to learn more, and as we get closer to the actual draft, I'm sure we will for sure be doing a Dom and Pop mock. For this one, we're just commenting on the other ones that we see because we don't want to give that away. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, there's obviously Marvin Harrison Jr. is just a great prospect.
Yeah.
So you can argue the talent that he brings to the table, but the Pats got to do something at quarterback. I mean, they've got to.
Yeah.
As far as we're concerned, It's interesting. I think, let me see what ESPN says here, just to give another perspective and see. Okay, see if they can break the tie. So again, they got Caleb Williams going to the Bears. So you could see that the consensus there is that's what's going to go down for the Bears. Seems like a
Yeah,
lot. ESPN breaks the tie. Jaden Daniels to the Commanders. So interesting.
yeah,
2 out of 3 top mock drafts has Jaden Daniels going to the Commanders. They do have Drake May going to the Patriots. So, again, 2 out of 3. And then, Marvin Harrison to the Cardinals. So Joe Alt again, top 5. So he seems to be the top offensive tackle option out there. And I think those are probably the top highlights from the ESPN one. So I don't know. What do you think, son? What's your general thoughts looking at these mocks here?
I mean, generally, I really like number two is the most important thing for me,
Of
and as it
course.
is for all of us, right? And I don't have a feel on Drake May versus Jaden Daniels yet. I like a lot of what Daniels has done. I like the ascension with Daniels. The plateauing with Drake May makes me a little bit nervous. I love the physical tools, though, that Drake May has with his height. I know Daniels is about the same height, but Drake May's got a little bit more size. And the arm strength on that guy is fantastic. And an interesting nugget. This is one of many stats that may prove to be completely irrelevant, but an interesting nugget I saw was that 49 or almost 50% of Jaden Daniels' completions were either on go routes or hitch routes. So I think that's just interesting in the situation where he's got Malik Neighbors down there and he is not necessarily being forced to drive the ball down the field in the mid range a lot, which is what the NFL game is built on, right? Is those passes between 10 and 30 yards down the field. That is what that NFL offense. If you could really drive the ball down the field consistently in that range, you're going to get a deep shot from time to time, but teams are so good at taking that away from you. You're going to check it down from time to time when you have to, but it's that 10 to 30 yard range that really makes your money. And I think Drake May so far is a little bit better in that range, but it's so hard to tell there. But I will say the NFL Network mock, the Daniel Jeremiah mock is projecting the Patriots go veteran at quarterback. So that's another thing that's interesting is what do the Patriots do at quarterback going into the draft? Because is there a scenario where we love Jaden Daniels and Drake May, and the Patriots maybe only love Drake May, and they want to come up to number 2 and give us number 3? Is there a scenario where something like that could happen? That's what I'm most interested in. Otherwise, tons of wide receivers. We're not going to draft a wide receiver that high. Tons of tackles. I don't think we're going to draft a tackle that high. I don't know. But that's my mock
It,
draft.
it, it makes you wonder, right,
Okay.
whether because of his stature, arm strength, kind of that combination of size, but pretty decent mobility, does Drake May come out of that combine situation with does he get a boost out of that? Because he's got all the measurables you would want. And, yeah, Jaden Daniels is going to impress with his speed, but his size is a bit of a concern just in terms of, and when he gets hit, it looks like a train wreck out there, right? He
It's like
just
a
he
Looney
doesn't
Tunes episode.
absorb. Although he still got through the season, so it's interesting. Like I said, it's I'm not here making the case for Drake May. We kind of went on record saying we were kind of favoring Daniels, but you could see that we're waffling back and forth, and it's it has your head spinning a bit in terms of what you read. But 2 of the 3 mock drafts that we just went through from very high sources, right? NFL Network, CBS, and ESPN have us picking Daniels. I said it before; it's going to be fun to watch, and I'm going to roll with whatever we do and get behind that pick because at this point, I got no choice but to trust in what our brain trust is going to do there, right? And it's interesting. I thought this was interesting that all 3 have our neighbors to the north. Well, 2 of the 3 have our neighbors to the north, picking Amarius Williams as an offensive tackle from Georgia with their first round pick. And
Mm-hmm.
then ESPN has them picking Kamari Lassiter, who's a cornerback from Georgia. So both picks from Georgia, one a quarterback, one offensive tackle. I'm expecting comments about that insider. Who do you want for your boys to pick in the NFL draft? But let's move on to that, given we're not a Ravens podcast.
Oh, neighbors to the north, the Ravens. Okay, I was trying to do the science on that. I couldn't quite pick up the. There's a lot of teams north of DC. I was trying to figure out which one was our neighbors.
Who would you classify as our neighbor?
Sure. I was thinking maybe inside the division. I don't know. I was a little confused by that one, but it's all good. I'm all the way on the West Coast now. Geography, not my strong suit. Social studies was a guaranteed B on that report card every year. Never really took that one to the next level. But speaking of taking things to the next level, boys need to upgrade all across the board next year. And we've got a roster grades podcast coming for you in the near future. Be ready for that. But a big part of upgrading and a big part of what these two things go together, talking draft, is going to be free agency too, right? And we're in that weird point in the year where free agency is about to open up. We're going to talk about free agency for like 3 weeks, and then we're going right back to full draft coverage. But I think you want to talk a little bit about Commanders free agency and what we have to look forward to for general roster moves, and then kind of maybe how that will impact the draft and the draft selections and things past just round one, right?
Yeah, what we're going to do here is Hogshaven wrote a great article where they projected who our free agency picks are, who our cuts are going to be, and who we're going to draft in all 7 rounds. So I think we just, all credit to Hogshaven. Let's just break that article down. Let's just go through, what they're projecting and just assume that's going to be reality. And let's just comment on what we think about, that in terms of roster construction for the Commanders.
Yep. Yeah, let's break down into it. So let's start. You want to start with cuts?
Let's go right top to bottom. Yeah. Just roll with it.
So looking like we're going to do cuts, re-signing, and then key free agent signing. So starting with cuts, Logan Thomas, definitely, I think all but done. Cut candidate, we'd save $6.25 million on the cap there. It's just a guy that, unfortunately, he flashed in an offense where not much was flashing at one point, got hurt, could never really be the same after the injury, and just a lot of consistent injuries. And then when he was on the field last year, look, I like Logan the guy, but he was awful. He was just awful.
Yeah, it's definitely a position we need to upgrade on as tight end. I got no qualms. Again, love the guy, but I think we have to get out of the Ashburn syndrome of loving our guys too much and realize that, there are guys like Logan, unfortunately, and especially with his, I think he's getting in those 30s now. That to me makes a lot of sense. I think we need to upgrade tight end position.
His best ball is years behind him. I think even cutting him going into last year might have made some sense. But obviously it makes a lot more sense this year with looking to upgrade in the draft later on down the line, or there are some pretty good free agent tight ends available for like that veteran presence for a young quarterback, which usually those two things are very important. You saw what Goddard did for Hurts a couple years ago. You saw what what's his name, Dalton Schultz did for Stroud last year. That's usually a very important connection for a young quarterback to have a reliable tight end. Andrew Wiley is another one. This one's interesting because I've heard mixed on whether or not you're going to cut him. You do guarantee him some money, but you figure he's clearly not going to be around, and he's not a guy you want to have on the field. Just to call a spade a spade, maybe he can do better on the inside. But
it's another one I have no issue with. I mean,
me neither.
That line was awful. He was awful. Let's do a reset. I'd even prefer, going young there if we need to, or finding another vet. But I think that was Eric Bieniemy signing, and it didn't work out. It clearly didn't work out. Move on.
I mean, it's just so classic. Ron Rivera moves there. Like you go bargain shopping for the guy who played out of his mind in the Super Bowl, but really did not have that good of a season. Time to let him go. So those are the cuts. Obviously, we're going to spend a little more time on those because those are guys that you're familiar with. We're going to kind of speed things up here a little bit, going through the rest here. Re-signings, Cam Curl, That's a big one. They're talking about 4 years for $45 million, cap hit of $5 million in 2025. That would make a lot of people, including Cam Curl's dad, Greg, who does follow us on Twitter and interact with us from time to time, it would make them all very happy. And I'd love to see Cam back at a reasonable price, which I think this would be. And then Khaleke Hudson. I think this one's interesting for 3 years at $18 million. What do you make of those two, Pop?
Yeah, Cam actually had a social media post. I think it was on Twitter that was pretty positive, showing him, with the Commanders. So maybe, who knows? Maybe he's already got some early vibes from the coaching staff, and about coming back. Khaleke,
Yeah,
I don't know. I could take or leave that. I kind of feel like that's like a classic Ron Rivera guy. I'd rather see Curtis Samuel. If I got to pick two, I'd go Cam and Curtis. If
yeah,
I'd pick two for re-signing there.
yeah. I think so too. It's just not a. I don't know. Khaleke Hudson's fine. He doesn't move the needle, but maybe this is a guy who incredibly athletic, a little bit undersized. Maybe this is a Dan Quinn renaissance
It doesn't
guy.
fit what I'm feeling from that, though, that they want those physical, linebackers. I don't know. It just doesn't. Maybe it's just a gut feel. It just doesn't fit for me. But
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I agree. I think that one's kind of fascinating. But otherwise, that's it for re-signings. So key guys that might be let to walk there: Cam Curl, or not Cam Curl, excuse me, Kendall Fuller and Antonio Gibson might be go the way of the dodo in terms of their time in DC. Those guys look like they'd be left off here. And then key free agent signings again.
So
Going to go
run through the whole list, and we'll comment at the end of it.
yeah.
In
So
terms
you
of the
got
highlights or whatever.
Jordan Whitehead at safety for 3 years, $45 million. Patrick Queen at linebacker, 4 years, $60 million. Jonah Jackson at left guard, 4 years, $45 million. So there's your Andrew Wiley cut. Bryce Huff on the edge, 3 years, $30 million. Noah Fant, tight end, 3 years, $24 million. And Jordan Lewis, quarterback from Dallas, 3 years, $20 million.
You've got the scouting report, so I'd love to hear from you. What do you think the highlights are here? What do you think? Because you're much better at that than I am. I mean, I know there's some names here that I've heard you mention
Yeah,
already in previous pods. So
Patrick Queen's going to jump off the tape as the big one here, right? That's going to jump off the sheet here. That would be the flashiest signing of the offseason by far. Was really great, kind of the Robin to Roquan Smith's Batman in Baltimore. You wish Adam Peters was here a couple years ago and Roquan Smith was available, and maybe we would have just had him. But yeah, Patrick Queen certainly a name that I'm intrigued by. That would be the high point of this list for me, and I'll give you the low point of this list too, and that would be Noah Fant. I am not interested in Noah Fant.
who's he with now?
That's the problem. Is that question right there? I believe he's with Seattle. I think he went over there in the Russ Wilson trade. I don't know if he's still there. I'll do a quick.
I'll check
quick
that. You
Google.
keep
Yeah,
going. I'll check it.
he's in Seattle. I mean, yeah, I guess he's still young, which is crazy. He's only 26. Did come from Iowa, which is like tight end university. But I don't know, man. Noah Fant is a guy that every year people are like, he's the breakout tight end this year, and he just never does it. And he's been in some bad systems. I'll give him that. I'm not impressed by Noah Fant. I know
What about Huff as our edge pickup? What do you think there?
all over that. All over that. We got to bolster at edge. Brian Burns is just asking for a stupid amount of money, so I'm not interested in that. I think edge is a position that, similar to quarterback, you just end up overpaying most of the time if you go and get a free agent. But yeah, I'm all over bringing in somebody from that Jets defense. He's 25 years old. He's a freak.
I
Super
think his
strong.
free agency is going to be exciting. I fully expect Adam Peters and this group to cook during free agent. And the fact, I think it's encouraging the way we've been able to attract coaches to Washington as now like a destination spot. I think the same thing's going to be a free agents, and hopefully they're smart about it. I mean, I like the list overall in terms of, addressing positions of need. Um, it's interesting. It's going to be interesting. Great job by Hogs Haven in this article breaking that down. They've also got a 7-round draft projection. So why don't we break that down really quick? Obviously, we're not going to know these deeper round guys too well. We can comment a little bit about the positions that we're addressing and whether or not we feel like that's the right approach.
Yeah. So we got Drake May at quarterback for UNC, number 2 overall. Don't need to tell you any more about that guy. You've
So
heard
now we're
enough
2-2.
anymore. Yeah. So
Two
now we're
Jaden
even.
Daniels.
What we're gonna do at number 2. It's very very interesting. But you got that, and then you got Kingsley Suamatia, offensive tackle out of
Matea.
BYU. Sumatea. God, I mean, I almost want to draft Joe Alt just so we get a tackle whose name I can pronounce, right? Like we have been covering some names on these, but we'll get it right once you come to DC.
Right, potential Wiley replacement at right tackle there, and
Yeah.
according to the article, a very athletic kid. So love all that.
Yeah, stud, can play on both sides. I wonder what the plan is at left tackle via this article, because Charles Leno also not coming back via this situation. So interesting here. Adia Isaac, edge from Penn State, coming over there. You got to figure Dan Quinn might have a pretty good pulse on Penn State edge rushers, given the Micah Parsons situation. Bolstering up an edge there as well. Xavier Legette, wide receiver out of South Carolina, big body guy. Blazing speed, just not necessarily the best route runner, but already can kind of take the top off the defense. You hope we need some of that. We do not have that in any way, shape, or form. Junior Colson, linebacker out of Michigan, inside linebacker, really was a key piece and is NFL ready, which I think is a huge thing for some of our later round draft picks right now, is getting guys that are NFL ready, because we're just so thin across the board on the roster. Then you got, here's our answer at tight end, Theo Johnson out of Penn State. Great blocker, also great receiving threat. He's kind of a developmental project maybe, and you could kind of bring the two together with Fant, kind of getting them started, and then he can kind of pick up the back end of that after Fant's deal runs out maybe. Zach Zinner, offensive guard at Michigan. This is a little bit of a Ron Rivera pick here. You're kind of capitalizing on the injury to get maximum value, but reports are that he's kind of gotten it together. And these late rounds is like, this is when you draft your backups and when you take shots, right? These are like your lottery tickets. So a little bit of that going on there. And then Evan Williams, safety at Oregon, is Will Putnam out of Clemson. Has the ability to play both center and guard. He'll need to work a little bit to figure it out, but that's another project guy on the line. And then Evan Williams, safety out of Oregon, just very fast in game and good size, and you hope he can immediately just kind of come in and help out on special teams. But I did shout out with the teleprompter there. I did misspeak a little bit earlier. Charles Leno still has a year left on his deal. So while he was a potential cut candidate, you figure Charles Leno, who has become the punchline of how bad the offensive line was, but the reality of it is a pretty middle-of-the-road left tackle across the NFL. Not great, not awful either, just kind of there. He might start out as
if you were going to pick between Wiley and Leno, which one would you keep?
Definitely keep Leno. It's not close.
Yeah, so I think that's it. You can't.
Cornelius Lucas out of the 3, but call me crazy. I guess he doesn't have any guaranteed money left. So, but you do have Leno there at left tackle, and then that would put Suamadia, however you say it, at a right tackle. And basically, I guess the plan would be hopefully Sua, as we're going to call him, is strong enough you can move him left, and then you can move Leno right, either at the end of this season or midway through or at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I think overall, again, this is just a projection. Credit to Hogs Haven for doing that 7 rounds. I think they gave a nod to the Pro Football Network there in terms of what their picks were. But the fact that you're obviously addressing quarterback, offensive tackle with your early 2nd round pick, love that. You got edge in there. As your other 2nd round pick. So in the top 3 picks from 1 to 40, you're addressing three major positions and needs. So you got to love that. And then a little bit of
Yeah.
spread around wide receiver, linebacker, tight end, another offensive guard, center. So trying to beef up that O line. I think in general, pretty solid if this was the draft we ended up with. It's going to be
Yeah, I'd be
fun.
super.
Yeah.
I'd be super happy with that. It looks like a good situation, and this is one of those things where you look at it on paper and it all looks really nice, and it's not going to work out exactly like that. Not all of these guys are going
No,
to
of
be
course not.
studs.
Or available potentially, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
it's just
yeah.
it's not Madden franchise mode at the end of the day.
No.
Maybe Patrick Queen wants to stay in Baltimore and chase a ring. Although I was talking to some Ravens fans earlier today that are saying they're kind of feeling like it's time for him to go. But interesting stuff there, man. I think that's a really good
Great article.
recap on where we're at. Yeah, great article from the guys over at Hawks Haven. They're always a lot of fun to keep up with and to break down. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it for the guys here. A very thorough, dense 35 minutes for you guys. You guys got everything that you could possibly need for the off season in this podcast at this point of the year, at least. So, what do you say we sign off, Pop?
Sounds good.
All right. Without further ado, up and down.
This is Pop.
Have a great week, everybody.